Ladies and gentlemen, President Trump saved the United States of America $400 billion. Now I'm going to read you what he wrote, and then I'm going to give you the background and explain why. Tremendous things achieved for the U.S. on my NATO trip. Proudly for our country, no president has ever achieved so much in so little time without a U.S. increase. Other countries have already increased by $130 billion, with $400 billion soon. Such a thing has never been done before. Okay. So, what is he talking about? We're actually reducing we used to account for about 25% of the NATO budget. 22 to 25%. That's down to 16%. So Trump was like, we paid too much to protect other countries. NATO is not technically not even supposed to exist. It was a foil to the Warsaw Pact. It existed to prevent the USSR from invading Europe. That's it. Its charter, Article 5 of its charter, was meant solely to protect European nations, West Germany, Poland, France, the UK. Well, France actually left in 1966. Charles de Gaulle was right, actually. If you want the antithesis of Macron, Charles de Gaulle is the antithesis. But anyway, they left the military aspect of NATO in 1966, and they spent 40 years away from NATO. So if any country invoked Article 5, if let's say the USSR invaded Poland, France would be like, sorry, don't call us for 40 years. But anyway, 3 charts that show why Trump thinks NATO is a bad deal. Trump has repeatedly said the U.S. provides too much cash for NATO, spending big on maintaining defense systems across Europe and positioning 65,000 troops within the continent. On Tuesday, Trump issued another broadside, this time accusing Germany of not paying its fair share of defense. A withdrawal of U.S. from NATO would effectively destroy it with one stroke. And while nothing official has ever been said, several reports suggest Trump has considered ending U.S. involvement. I would support that. You know who else would support that? Noam Chomsky. Somebody who is probably, the antithesis of Trump on a whole bunch of things. By the way, he has some favorable things to say about Trump's foreign policy compared to President Obama. But anyway, look, not going to get lost here in, NATO itself estimates that as a percentage of GDP, the U.S. will far... Okay, so... In 2014, all NATO members agreed to increase their defense spending 2% of gross domestic product by 2024. Not legally binding. Not legally binding, meaning they don't have to increase. Meaning that there are no repercussions, legal repercussions. So if they don't meet, until Trump, the Orange Menace, there were no legal repercussions to not increasing defense spending by 2%. So if you're in NATO and the United States is covering a quarter of the budget every year, and the United States is really the only reason that NATO has any teeth, the only country that could defend Europe if theoretically Russia wanted to. But Russia is a 11th ranked economy in the world. It's not the Soviet Union anymore. It doesn't have all the satellite nations, and that's the Cold War is over. The 80s want their foreign policy back. That's what President Obama stated. So, I mean, you have a situation where Democrats, well, we'll get into Democrats in a second, but here, on spending, NATO allies are now really stepping up and delivering more than they have done for many, many years. This is the Secretary General Stoltenberg of NATO. Stoltenberg said non-U.S. NATO allies, Europe plus Canada, are on target to add more than $400 billion to their defense budgets by 2024. This backs up Trump's tweet today, or like about an hour ago. Pretty good. Pretty good. $400 billion doesn't grow on trees. It's pretty good. So when you look at it with the fact that we're spending less, they're spending $400 billion more, that's saving $400 billion. Because we would be paying that money had they not increased their spending to where they stated that they would increase their spending to. Should that additional spending materialize, it will bring the combined spending of all NATO allies to around par with the current U.S. outlay alone based on GDP. Well, they agreed to it anyway. So, in 1966, France under President Charles de Gaulle left NATO's military structure. He was right. Well, he was right. Doubting the organization's might against any invasion from the Soviet Union. It's interesting. It's interesting how Emmanuel Macron would want to disparage Trump when, one of the greatest leaders France has ever known in de Gaulle basically said, we don't want to be beholden to any multinational organization. But full membership by France was restored in 2009. And 10 years later, current French leader Emmanuel Macron is doubting the alliance. Well, too bad for him. Other leaders, whether it's Trudeau or Macron or other leaders, what they want is a greater voice on the global stage. They get that with NATO. Why? Because the United States, the United States has the highest military budget on the planet. The top 10, you could add 2 through 10, and it still wouldn't be. It might be, if you add all of those countries, it might be maybe under, a little bit over. Well, I think it still wouldn't reach what the United States spends in terms of defense. I want to scale back U.S. foreign policy. I want Americans home. I don't want us to be in never-ending counterinsurgency conflicts pushed by theorists like Max Boot and Bill Kristol and all these people that still think Bush's foreign policy is a good thing. But here, this is really interesting. This is really interesting. If you go to NATO's website, it's a hilarious website. Okay, NATO is a relic of the Cold War. It should not exist. Okay, it shouldn't exist anymore because there is no more Soviet Union. The Berlin Wall fell. The 80s want their foreign policy back. This is what President President Obama stated. But here, if you look at the NATO website, it's hilarious. And what they have it's just really funny. NATO promotes democratic values and enables members to consult and cooperate on defense and security-related issues to solve problems, build trust, and in the long run prevent conflict. It's a military alliance meant to counter the Soviet Union. And they ended up destroying and obliterating a country in Libya. And the chaos and the mayhem and the atrocities that have taken place there the past 10 years, close to 10 years since the NATO intervention, a miserably failed intervention in 2011. They're unspeakable, atrocities. But there are now slave auctions there. If you just want to go into what President Obama's foreign policy led to in Libya, it's unbelievable tragedy. But, Democrats, they care more about Trump's tweets. He's orange also, which is a big problem. Military. NATO is committed to the peaceful resolution of disputes. Really? What is this? Some kind of, therapy group? If diplomatic efforts fail, it has the military power to undertake crisis management operations. That's good. All these euphemisms. Crisis management operations. We're going to completely erase your country from the map. Have a nice day. Crisis management. I'm not even go to the NATO website. This is hilarious. These are carried out under the Collective Defense Clause of NATO's founding treaty. Now, this is wrong. Article 5 of the Washington Treaty. Article 5, or under United Nations mandate. Okay, so if it's referring to the original charter, Article 5 of the original NATO charter, that's wrong. Okay. It's wrong because the intervention in Libya had nothing to do with one of the members being attacked. If somebody goes after one member, all the members have to retaliate. Libya didn't. So, okay. Now, here we have the most hilarious part. A NATO decision is the expression of the collective will of all 29 member countries. Really? Then why are we in it? I don't want to be part of any group that has to have some kind of consensus regarding military decisions. Military decisions should benefit the United States only if it involves the United States military. And the same thing applies to every other nation and country in the world. Their military decisions should benefit them only. That's it. During the Cold War, you needed, if the Soviet Union theoretically had the potential to invade Europe, then NATO, and by the way, there were no NATO military, there was no military endeavor by NATO during that whole time. It was only after the Berlin Wall fell. But anyway, consensus decision-making at NATO. Oh, that's fun. All NATO decisions are made by consensus after discussion and consultation among member countries. Give me a break. The United States first, then the UK and France. The United States first, then the British and the French. And then everyone falls in line. And Germany. Germany also. So it's not a consensus. It's the U.S. If it benefits U.S. foreign policy, then the intervention happens. Or the military endeavor happens. If it doesn't, it don't happen. So I don't know why this is part of the website. Highlights: a decision reached by consensus is an agreement reached by common consent. What is this? What happened to this military alliance? It's like a group therapy session. When a NATO decision is announced, it is therefore the expression of the collective will of all the sovereign states. But they're not so sovereign. If they're not so sovereign, you can't have all of these countries having the same foreign policy. How does that work? That are members of the alliance. This principle of consensus is applied at every committee level. Yeah, right. Which implies that all NATO decisions are collective decisions made by its member countries. Yeah, that's not true. This is nonsense. I don't even think we should be. I mean, I'm leaning towards us leaving NATO, which would be unthinkable for a great many people. But the original charter, is not relevant in this day and age. Russia has the 11th ranked economy in the world. According to the Secretary General of NATO, he backs up. Without a U.S. increase, the other countries have increased by $400 billion, and we're decreasing our funding in there. So Trump did a good thing. I might be off on the accounting here because the $400 billion, in addition to the fact we're going to spend less, that's if it's $400 billion less every year, that's pretty good. Or if it's $400 billion less by 2024, 2022, that's pretty good. Really good. That's amazing. And when you look at, so let's see, annual budget, NATO. Okay, so it's hundreds of billions of dollars. Let's just see. Why is this a PDF? If we can save hundreds of billions of dollars, that's a great thing. That's a great thing. And that should be something that we appreciate in a leader. That should be something that should be something that is championed by people. But you know what? Of course, it's impossible. You can't even find. It's impossible. NATO annual budget. You still don't get it. It's like impossible. Here, let me just find this. It's impossible. But Democrats, they conveniently just preside over the sale of 20% of U.S. uranium capacity to Russia. Bill Clinton meets with Vladimir Putin at his home. You have a whole bunch of ties from Clinton to Russia. The Steele dossier, Uranium One, Bill Clinton getting $500,000. I mean, it's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. And then she calls Tulsi Gabbard a Russian operative because they're always projecting what they're guilty of doing. So it's just, with Democrats, if they're accusing you of something, you best believe that they're actually guilty of it. But it's impossible to find this. 6 here. Oh, I can't. Anyway, give me your thoughts below. You say $400 billion. $400 billion is a good thing. $400 billion is a great thing. Okay? Now, Democrats are never going to give Trump credit for this. The media will never give Trump credit. Nobody's going to give Trump credit. Trump is seen as the person who is just... And then they're saying, well, the world is laughing at you. Oh, they're laughing at Trump. It's like, so what? What do I care what Justin Trudeau thinks? Like, what do I care? Who cares about that? Who cares about that? Like, Democrats, their lives exist to just mock people and, it's like they live in this, like, giant high school world where, oh my goodness, Trump is not cool, he's not awesome. But at the end of the day, if he's saving the United States hundreds of billions of dollars as opposed to spending hundreds of billions and trillions like President Obama and Bush, I think that's a very good thing. Anyway, give me your thoughts. Give me your thoughts below. Check out H.A. Goodman's other channel. Ladies and gentlemen, it's like you have a relic of years past, and the NATO itself doesn't need to exist anymore. Russia is not going to invade the Soviet Union doesn't exist, and it's not going to invade West Germany, which doesn't exist, and Russia is certainly not going to invade Poland. So you don't need this type of military alliance where everything's made on consensus. You just don't need that. So it's a situation, ladies and gentlemen, where President Trump is forcing dialogue, forcing some kind of. He's changing a paradigm of thought, and that paradigm needs to change. So, if I'm reading this right, it's $987 billion in 2019. $987 billion. So if he's saving us $400 billion over the years, that's a really good thing. Give me your thoughts below. Definitely check out H.A. Goodman's other channel. And ladies and gentlemen, President Trump deserves some credit, a lot of credit actually, for forcing NATO members to actually pay their share. Give me your thoughts. Thank you so very, very much. Check out H.A. Goodman's other channel right now.